All right, good evening and welcome to the Waseca Public Schools School Board meeting for Thursday, February 18th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. And we are meeting in the Waseca Junior Senior High Performing Arts Center. And we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and we will continue with the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second it.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Recognition of any visitors. We don't have any visitors here in person. And did we receive any emails online? All right. Just a reminder to anyone watching that you can always send an email to wasecadistrict@gmail.com and we will reply to your email, and we can also read it out loud at a board meeting. So we'll move on to payment of claims. Mr. Pree, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we pay the claims for the month of January in the amount of accounts payable $4,399,254.01 and the payroll of $818,464.68.
All right, I have a first and I get a second. Did you second it? All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. All right, we will continue with our information items, beginning with our superintendent report from Mr. Hudspeth.
Well, good evening. I have two major topics to talk about tonight, and they're both relatively brief given where we are right now with our work this time of the year, but I think they are some exciting news to talk about and think through. From a perspective of our learning model, as you were aware, it was big news yesterday. The governor did create some flexibility for secondary school students to be able to return to school in an in-person model. I'm very pleased and proud of our team that Waseca Public Schools was ahead of the game on that. We've done a nice job throughout this entire school year, I think, of really looking carefully at what's happening with ourselves locally, what's happening in our schools and with our staff, and making sure that we get students on site as often as we can. And so, while I'm grateful and appreciative of the flexibility that the Safe Learning Plan adjustments does provide for us, we were on our road to this direction in any case, and so I'm feeling good about that for our district. So this week we successfully welcomed 7th, 8th, and 12th graders back to our 4-day-a-week model at our junior senior high, which of course mirrors what our K-6 students are doing, pre-K-6 students are doing throughout the district. That's gone very well the first 3 days. We had to make a small adjustment to a lunch, I think moving one math section to a different lunch to be able to space the kids out a little bit more, but lunch was our biggest concern, and that's gone well. Students are moving throughout the building, they're being respectful, they're staying distance whenever they can, recognizing that it's a goal. It's a goal to stay at least 3 feet apart whenever we can, and they're doing that for the most part, which is exciting to see. Now, next week, we'll welcome our 9th, 10th, 11th graders back to our 4-day-a-week model. If you recall, last week we talked about we would do that no later than the week of March 2nd. Well, given some of the flexibility with the Safe Learning Plan from the governor, what's happening in our building, which is a consistent number of cases and exposures, we're not having a spike of any kind at this moment, as well as just people feeling comfortable as more staff gets vaccinated. There's no reason to wait. And so, as we said, we would potentially be able to do it next week if we could. Well, we can. And so I'm excited about that, to have all of our 7th through 12th graders join our 4-day model next week with that. And that was very our support team, regional team was supportive of that. Our staff and students are excited about that. Families were notified about 4 o'clock today that was going to be the plan, just the 9th, 10th, 11th grade families, I believe, from Dr. Miller, and they're moving forward with that. So I feel good about starting next week. We will have all of our students in at least the 4-day-a-week model, which is, as I'm looking throughout the state right now, particularly after yesterday's announcement, I was curious to see how that would react. What we're doing with 4 days a week and maintaining a distance learning day, I don't have any data for it, but it does appear to be a theme as I talk to other districts about what they're doing, maintaining that 1 day a week as a distance day, partially because of the prep time that the executive order requires for student or teachers that are teaching in 2 different models, because we still do have about 200 students in full-time distance learning, so just about that 11% mark that we've had throughout the school year, as well as we know that we're not out of this at any given time, and our students need to, and our staff need to maintain some potential practice with that distance learning in case we should ever have to do a quick reset in any particular grade level building, whichever case may be. We have been talking about the remainder of the school year and Mondays. We're at the very beginning of those conversations. We know that it's going to be coming in the next few weeks to make a decision if we're going to do anything different with Mondays the rest of the school year. So I can't say we've been very far with those conversations with our staff or administrators, but it has been on my mind and the conversation has been bringing up. So the board and community can know that we are still talking about that as what our options are for the remainder of the school year. Just a quick COVID update. Right now we have 4 active cases district-wide, which, as you recall, over the last several weeks since winter break, we've come back from winter break, that has been a 3 to 5 case, almost constant, which isn't necessarily a great thing because it just means it's still coming and trickling in, but it is a positive thing in the sense that it's not increasing at any given rate. We have 15 students right now out on quarantine for an exposure. We've been averaging between 15 and 25. Really, that's actually kind of a lower number than we've had since we came back from winter break. And so I'm feeling really good about people who are doing what they need to do, staying home when they're sick, following the quarantine expectations. We have to this very moment, and I don't believe in jinxing, so I don't need to worry about it, but at this very second, we've been successful with our activities. We haven't had to do anything there because coaches and advisors and students are doing what they need to do. At this point, we have about 2/3 of our staff who have been offered the vaccine for that. We do have a small percentage of staff who are choosing not to get the vaccine, and that's, of course, their option. The Waseca County Public Health has been a fantastic partner for us with that. They were hoping to have another clinic today with a shipment of doses that got delayed due to some weather. As you know, the cold that happened the last few days have impacted transportation particularly from doses coming from the south for shipments there. However, they do expect to get that here shortly and then schedule a next clinic, which would include a good chunk of the rest of our staff. And then they are expecting another next week's dose to come either hopefully next week or early the following week. And so by close to the end of March, or the end of February, we should be very close to having all of our staff having been offered the vaccine and having been received at least their first dose. So that's a celebration. As I was talking with some superintendents around the state today, particularly in the few superintendents I talked to were in the metro area, and they're looking at 15 to 25% of their staff vaccinated at this point. And so I feel fortunate that Waseca County has been such a great partner in getting our staff in there for those vaccines. Another thing you'll be reading about when it comes to learning model is our summer planning and thinking about what we're doing for summer school. And that's been a significant topic at the legislature, talking about some funds to prepare us for summer school. We've been talking with Brooke McGuire, our Director of Teaching and Learning, as well as the principals, about really creating a robust and comprehensive summer program. We are aiming, and I think it's fair to say this is a goal, that we will have something for almost every student who would like a summer experience of some kind this summer. And I know the legislature is trying to speed up, or I guess MSBA and MASA are advocating for the legislature to move that part of the budget forward quicker so districts know what we have. But we have to keep in mind that we also have ESSER dollars that were previously allocated, and we know what that's going to be. ESSER 2 is currently in the legislature waiting for approval to come to us, in which case we plan to use those for summer dollars. So even in advance of anything the legislature might put towards it, we know we have the funds set aside to be able to do that, and it will be kind of a coding switch if and when the state legislature comes with something different in June or July with that. But we're looking forward to really supporting our students this summer with whatever opportunities we have available for that. So while it seems like it's a a big topic. We're right there within the conversation, preparing ourselves for the summer. And the last thing I would say is it's coming up on March 1st, so we're thinking about 21-22 in the next school year already, and talking to think about what are some key things we have to think about for next year. Probably the largest what if right now for us remains distance learning, and what the state expectations will be for providing distance learning, if it will be an expectation to continue to provide distance learning, as well as the reality that becoming a certified online school is an extensive process that requires quite a bit of resources. And so we know that as a district, we are preparing to we're working with our partners with Southwest Metro, working with our APEX program to be able to, if it's a requirement, or we have students who continue to want it, and we're allowed to provide that, we can work with some of our partners to provide distance learning for students so they don't have to go elsewhere to get that distance learning experience. If like I said, there's about 200 students right now that are choosing that at this point. If that remains into the fall and that's an option for students, which since there's online academies throughout the state, I have to assume it's going to continue to be an option for students, so we need to be prepared to be competitive in that realm, and that's what we're working on right now through some of those conversations so we don't fall behind and lose students potentially to a neighbor who may provide a program that we cannot. So we're doing our best to be prepared in that regard. So that's what I had for the learning model part of my update, so I pause for questions before I move on.
Just a clarification, when you're talking about summer programming and that any student who wants it can have it. So what you're saying is whether or not the school district comes to you and says your child will benefit from it, if you feel as a parent that your child will benefit from summer school, you can sign them up.
That's our goal. And what we're looking at, though, is making a kind of a diverse set of opportunities for students. So, yes, there's going to be some remediation. There'll be some credit recovery. There'll be some support in that regard, but potentially also some enrichment, and potentially for some, outdoor activities and things that are more, some things you might actually see in the community ed brochure and sometimes for a fee that we might be able to provide for students based on those experiential ed opportunities. So we're going to provide a menu of options, hopefully, for students so they have an opportunity.
Cool.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah.
I had a question. The distance learners for next year, is there a way that we might be able to try to determine what that interest might be for next year, just to know, I mean, are we looking at 200, are we looking at 20, may help us decide how much efforts do we put towards that, or how do we plan for that?
Right, and so currently high school registration process is going on, so Dr. Miller and his team is working through that at the high school a little bit. I think the biggest piece the answer is yes, we'll have to look at that and in the next few weeks to work through that, because the other option is it considered an option or not for families? Because if it's you either go to a certified online academy like Connections Academy, or you stay here, I am in person. I imagine the number of families that choose to do that will probably be smaller than you could choose it in your own district if you wanted to. And then we want to make sure we provide something valid so they don't feel like they want to go next door. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, very good. All right, so then the strategic plan portion of the update, I wanted to highlight just a few things. As you know, our six focus areas, 4 of them are really heavily on teaching and learning, academic programs, student support. So I covered a lot of that learning model update for some of those, but I also wanted to let you know that, we're continuing to talk with some of our local partners and business partners, talk about some career pathway opportunities for students. We're finding that with some of our manufacturing companies specifically, students need to be 18 to work there. And so that potentially has been seen as a barrier in the past. And so we're going to be working at maybe some tours, bringing in speakers into our junior, senior high to talk to students about opportunities with them, what type of courses they might want to take when they're in high school to prepare to work at, such as an ITRON, for example, where you have to be 18 to work there, but what can you be doing when you're 16 and 17 if you're interested in that particular field? So I'm excited about expanding that opportunity for our students to know those are options for them. As of right now, I just also want to mention that MCA assessments are currently on the table. That's what the expectation is, that we will give those assessments this spring. We were waiting to see if there would be some sort of waiver or anything else coming from the state. And at this point, we've been told they're going to be given, prepare for them, and so we will. And we look at them like we always do, as a one snapshot of how students are doing, and we'll use them to create our plans for going forward for our instruction. Well, that's good. We're moving into hiring season. And so as we budget and staff for next year, working with Elizabeth and principals very closely on what our staffing needs are going to be. As you all are well aware, we're looking at preparing a fiscal year 22 budget that does not go into our fund balance like we have the last couple of years strategically. And so staffing will probably be part of that conversation. How do we work that through attrition or something like that? But we're also working on recruiting high-quality staff. So what job fairs are still going to be available for us? We know we're going to have some turnover with some staff that are, I'm aware of a handful of staff members who are considering retirement at this point. Looking at that and getting into some quality hiring. I shared with you in the update yesterday, just in case anyone was interested, the process for hiring our food service director. And I'm looking forward to getting that posted on Monday. Elizabeth and I she did the work, and we looked through the job description today to update that. To make it a little more modern, since Mr. Forsey's been with us for quite some time, to be able to do that. I'm looking forward to involving a large portion of staff in that process to pick the best person for our district. And then, of course, negotiations are coming up this summer. And so we'll be looking over the next few months to prepare for that and looking at what opportunities we have to support some improved contracts for our staff, but also know that we're going to have some financial considerations to take into account based on what we know is happening statewide and with funding. The legislative outcomes will obviously significantly impact where we are with negotiations. And the last thing I would mention is just from in the community engagement option. You know, the monthly column in the Waseca County News continues to get some, positive feedback from those who are having that opportunity to look at it, just to share some things that maybe don't come up in our day-to-day work. Tomorrow morning, I have the opportunity to do my second coffee with the superintendent Zoom meeting. I'm looking forward to getting those out in the community when our group size can get a little bigger. We did have a handful of individuals who came the first time, and hopefully we'll get a little discussion going on tomorrow morning. And, those have been really positive because oftentimes community members or family members will come with a specific question, or someone else will have a question they hadn't thought of and have the opportunity to learn. So, I'm appreciating that. I'm also looking forward to, as the spring comes around and things are opening up a little bit, getting out and doing some more community introductions. I've met with quite a few people in a one-on-one in the office, but having the opportunity to go and see them in their workplace or, see them in their place of business is going to be excited to do that in the next few months. And particularly as we get through activities and you can actually get more people in the gyms and we can go and talk to folks, that's got me very excited about how we can start to open ourselves back up and get to know more people in the community. So.
All right. Any questions for Eric about either topic? So, no? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our financial reports from Elizabeth.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak with you. And in our board agenda are all the documents that we use as a communication tool with the board regarding expenditures and revenues, as well as monthly enrollment. But another key reason that we do this is that helps us monitor as we're going through the budget year. How are we trending? Are there assumptions that we either were spot on or things that we need to adjust? So those are really, it's a couple of different reasons we do this. It's definitely a communication tool to use with the board and our community, but as well as for us to monitor to make sure we're being as fiscally responsible as we possibly can. So right now, this is a key time for reflection and information gathering. As Mr. Hudspeth had mentioned, we are definitely working on updating our current year budget. It's mid-year. We've been able to see how things have been trending. We're watching our enrollment information, and now we're able to really tighten up the budget from what we had anticipated in June and bring that to the board in March. We're definitely working through staffing and what that can look like for fiscal year 22. So again, these are tools that help us project and plan for upcoming years, not only for fiscal year 22, but we use these in our 5-year projection models. So whether it's our unreserved, undesignated fund that we're looking at, whether it's our capital outlay plan, our long-term facility maintenance plan, this monthly information really drives that information and how we can plan for multiple years, and again, try to do the best that we can to estimate and keep ourselves fiscally healthy and balanced. We're watching watching the legislature right now and the activity that's happening as key issues come up. It's a great opportunity for us to get engaged in that process and definitely advocate for our district, outstate districts, public education in general. As Eric had mentioned before, we're learning more and more about that second round of ESSER and GEAR dollars that are scheduled to come our way. We continue to hear more and more information, but it's not been officially approved just yet. So once that information is officially released and we're allocated funds, we'll continue to keep the board updated on where we're at with plans and process. We've been working with our principals and our directors and department heads on just gathering information on what we could potentially use those funds for and how to maximize that that funding. Couple of key ways, obviously, to make sure that we're serving our students and our staff as most appropriately as we can, and then how can we also use those funds to help protect our fund balance, yet meet the needs based on whether it's a summer need, a summer school need, anything related to COVID. So definitely grateful for the funds that are coming our way regarding that. Another thing that I'm going to be continuing to work on, so through networking, really working on what a comprehensive budget book could look like. So I think we've definitely made strides in our budgeting and our budget communication. It used to be pretty much a one-page document, and we've expanded that to add more narrative, more graphs, and we really want that to be a key communication tool. I'll say that's a goal of mine. I really want that to be a key communication tool for our staff, our board, our community, something that's easier to read or digest, or multiple forms of ways people might understand our budget. So we're continuing to work on how we can continue to expand that. So if there's anything that the board would like to see in a budget, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to continue to modify that, because that is a goal of mine, is to continue to enhance that document to make it as readable and user-friendly as possible. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments that they'd like to share? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Elizabeth, I do have a question. Could you just comment on a couple of the, especially on our revenue? We have one item where we brought in like 1,000% of what we had budgeted for. Could you just kind of explain where that came from?
Yes, absolutely. So we had some issues with our boiler at the junior high school, which did fall under it did fall under our insurance coverage. So if you look on the expenditure side as well, in the equipment side, that is also a little bit more accelerated than our prior years. Part of that was we had to replace some heat exchangers, but we are receiving insurance money to help offset that. So that's where that is coming in, and that's why it looks so much more inflated than what we had anticipated, and we'll adjust that in our budget then as well. So that's a great question.
I knew there was a good reason. It's one of those things that stands out when you see it. So, thank you.
I lost sound. I don't know if, oh, okay. It's back now. Sorry. No, I apologize if I missed a question.
No, I was just saying, I knew there was a good reason for it. It's just one of those things that when you see it, you're like, I probably should ask why. So thank you.
I appreciate the question.
Any other questions about the financial side of Elizabeth's report? And then did you have an enrollment report for us then?
It kind of goes along with us taking that time for reflection, excuse me. We're trending as you normally would. That's why I like to include the 5-year, because you can kind of see how each year, even though our enrollment is down, it's still trending the way it normally would in a year without COVID. So we're leveling off now. That December to January time is usually a time that we level off. So you can see that that's been in history how we've normally our enrollment has normally trended. So again, nothing out of the ordinary. Just unfortunately we're down in enrollment overall, but the trend has remained the same from the prior years. And we'll use that as we had mentioned before of what what will we anticipate for next year's enrollment? I know we talked a little bit about potentially surveying and what would be a distance learning need, depending upon what we are or not required to provide, and that'll help us build our fiscal year 22 budget as well.
Cool. All right, any other questions for Elizabeth? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, then we will move on to our committee and board member reports. Grant, do you want to start us off today?
Sure. I'll report on a couple and give somebody else a chance to. Our policy committee met once since the last meeting, and there's some review things there. At least we have a schedule now for the things we're going to review over the next 3 years, which Caitlin helped put together. So business as usual, I think, on that one.
Yes. All right, thank you. Dave?
I'll just add a couple things about the policy committee. Some of the policies that we went over have to do with annual audit, investments, gift acceptance policy, and there was quite a bit of information on transportation, which I think we all found, I know I did, quite interesting. And one of the things that I noticed in all the information about transportation, that according to, if I'm right here, the law and our policy, transportation is not a right, it is a privilege. And I would have thought it was a right. You know, you have a right to be transported to school, to home, whatever, and it's not. Am I correct?
It's listed in statute as what the minimum transportation level can be as far as 2 miles, but then yes, you can have that revoked if it doesn't go appropriate. Yep.
It's a privilege. And then I was going to mention one other thing. I've been able to take a little time and watch a couple of webinars on the MSBA website. I watched one a couple weeks ago. It was called Overview of the School Finance Working Group Draft Recommendations. Kind of a long title there with Tom Melcher. Tom Melcher has always kind of been considered, I think he's retired now or semi-retired, but kind of the state guru when it comes to school finance. I found it very, very interesting and very informative, well worth the time. And then I happened to watch one today. I don't know if anybody else watched it, but it was on the federal COVID funds and what we've gotten so far and where it might be going in the future. Again, a lot of good information.
Good. I wasn't able to do that one today, so I'm glad someone was able to do that. So, good. Thank you. Charlie?
Yes, I've had a couple of them. The one was Insurance and Safety Committee. We met on, I believe it was yesterday, and we talked a little bit about the dental insurance. That fund balance is good there. Some talk, some questions about maybe vision. Didn't sound real positive about that. Colin talked about the staffing and all the work that the custodial crews are doing and dealing with the cold weather, frozen water pipes, snow, watching so the sidewalks are clean and so people don't slip and fall and all that. So, and then we'll talk just a little bit about the vaccination as Superintendent Husband had talked about, and then workers' comp, making sure that if someone has an accident, that it's reported so that you can follow up on that, and return to work and all that. And there's some other available benefits out there, some employee assistance programs, that people they can look at on the online. The employee handbook, there's been some revisions in that, but everything went well there, I thought. We had a legislative meeting here 2 weeks ago, something like that, with Superintendent, and of course getting stability in the school finance, that's a priority, but I don't know if it was anybody else. Who else was there on that? Julie, you were there.
Yeah, and Grant, yeah. Okay. Yep.
So that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Yeah, just following up on that legislative committee, which was a really fun committee, I have to say. I really enjoyed I don't know why, but I really enjoyed that one. But Mr. Husbeth is coming up with a legislative platform just for Waseca Public Schools to send to our local, our representatives, so that they kind of know what's important to us here when they're voting on some of these education bills this spring. So, a big highlight is consistency in our funds and also local control of being able to use funds that works best for each district. So, so those are some things that, and I'm sure when we have it finalized, I'm sure he'll share it with everyone else. So, and then we did have a personnel committee a while ago, but it's since our last board meeting. But we talked about short-term solution for a vacant cultural liaison position. So I think that has been filled. We approved that assignment tonight, and then also discussed the hiring process for a director for food service. So that was good. And then Eric and I had the superintendent evaluation committee, but I think we're the only ones that thought we had a meeting. So we talked about lots of stuff, but he did review his goals, which he also did in detail with the whole board in December. And then we kind of looked over what his original transition plan for coming into the job was, and really, despite COVID and everything, he's pretty much hit everything that he planned on doing, so that's good. And then as I'm on the negotiations committee, and so I'm preparing for that, and I don't know if Charlie or Adita, if you guys are doing this, but I've been doing the MSBA training for negotiations. So I've done part 1, and then part 2 is coming. So I've done it like 3 times, and every time it's just like, oh yeah, that's a good thing to know, and yeah, so it is really helpful. So that's all I have. So Katie.
I had the policy, which was discussed, and then finance, and it was nice when, right now with the budgeting, they're in the 3 policy years, and moving forward, we're just trying to look at very realistic numbers, not trying to project really huge into the future, just focusing on where we're at right now.
Yep.
Because it's such a what-if type situation, so that was interesting. Elizabeth did a great job of explaining all of that.
Nice.
You're up, Scott.
All of mine have been,
You can share something extra.
well, at the finance, we did talk about our reduced ATMs. So that was one thing that was interesting.
All right.
So.
Thank you. Adita.
And I have community ed committee, and as usual, Paul was very good explaining what's going on, and everything looks like it's going very well. Jane asked, it's full, and they are preparing for summer and fall. Also, the programs they have, the dance recital at the time when we met, he was very, excited. I know families who participated, and it was very, very nice. They are doing great, and it's good to hear that they can do more and more stuff for our kids and adults. Then I had PG&D meeting. This is something new for me. That was, I need to learn a lot, but I think the major things, they have 2 days in service in March 1st and March 8th, and if I remember properly, because of the training, and I think it was hardly, and please forgive me if I'm not right, that they were not able to commit to 1 day. They had already another training. They split it in 2 days, and they know exactly what they are doing. I was just, listening and trying to understand what's going on. And then I was, participating to the negotiation seminar. It was fun. It's something new for me, a lot of new information, and it's good. It was good.
Did you want to start us off with recognitions or positive board feedback?
Oh, I would like to say thank you to Brooke, who, took her time and sit with me and talk to me through the committee, PG&D, and then, the purpose and everything, and she was very helpful, and it was good. And also everybody in the sport activities and people around, I think everything goes well. My kids are in many sports, and I'm running around, but, everything is well organized, and it's great. It's great to see kids back to school and back to activities, and just waiting for spring and summer to come.
Great. Scott.
For me, I wanted just to bring up that, the reason we're able to go back to school is because, and get our kids back in the buildings, is because our community our students and our staff are working so hard at being careful with what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I think that's awesome to see. That's all I have.
I was part of the leadership workshop that Clint and Brooke are participating in with South Central Leadership. And last time, the first one, we were looking at what do you want for a profile of a teacher, of an ideal teacher? And that was neat to see all the different districts describe what they would like. And a lot of them were similar. A lot of was collaboration and working with each other and being innovative and inventive. And then this next one was, can you describe what your vision is to even the general public or even your staff members? And not everybody could do that. It's hard. It's like where, especially right now, what do we want to be doing? Where do we want to be? So listening to everybody, no, you got to be more specific and fine-tuning it, so that was neat. So they've got, the next sessions are more with teacher interactions. So that'll be, I hope that we've got some more staff that are going to be participating in that one.
Was that that email that they'd sent out about like a Monday? Okay, I'm glad one of us was able to do that. So is anyone else doing that, or is it just awesome? Good. I had run into Clint the day that they sent that email, and I'm like, I can't make it work, and I felt so bad, but I'm glad that there's a couple of you that are doing that, so great. I wanted to call out, we accepted his resignation tonight in our consent agenda, but I just wanted to highlight Jason Forshee, who is resigning at the end of this year as our food service director. He's been our director for 19 years, is that right?
18. Yep.
Yeah, so almost 2 decades here with us. He's done so much for the program, and I wish him well as with the fire department is where he's going. And so obviously he's still in the community, and he's just moving on to something else that he loves. So I just wanted to recognize that. And then I also just want to give a shout out to our county public health department, and clearly the work that they're doing in these times, and not just getting our district vaccines for our staff, which I think is so important as we head back to school, and especially having so many kids 4 days a week, having our staff vaccinated makes, I think, everyone feel a lot better about that. But that they're also, of course, vaccinating JWP, New Richland, so it's not just our district that's benefiting, but I also appreciate all the education that they provide on social media about COVID and what we need to be thinking about and planning for our own health and safety. So they do a really great job. So that's it. Good.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to this in the Insurance and Safety Committee, but I do want to have a shout out to our custodial staff and the maintenance people. They've put a lot of hours in, I understand, and at the meeting yesterday, all the staff members that were there were talking about how good a job that our custodial staff, now with kids coming back into school and dirty shoes and all that other stuff that goes along with a lot of kids, and so they're going to be challenged even more, but I really want to compliment the guys because they've done an excellent job, so.
Kind of going along with my transportation theme, I would like to say thanks to Lentz and Palmer Bus Companies. I know just like everything around here has been crazy, I'm sure their year has been very crazy too, very out of the box. To the best of my knowledge anyway, they seem to have been very cooperative. They've helped us out with just tons of stuff. It's nice to have 2 bus companies that we can work well with. And so I just want to say thank you to them for safely and efficiently transporting our students, and also being willing to just be creative, again, work out of the box, try to make things happen. We appreciate that.
I had a couple things. I've been at a couple sporting events that have had, instead of the national anthem being recorded and played, actually has people singing it, which is kind of nice because it's been a long time since we've had real live music for that. I think they were even at a gymnastics meet tonight. The band was at one of the games, which they unfortunately couldn't even be inside, but to be in the audience and kind of hear that, it kind of gives you goosebumps because that's kind of what we're used to feeling for all the years prior to COVID. So that was really nice to have. The other comment is I've talked to some of the staff, and they've as opposed to, we've talked about how do we get through COVID? How do we make sure we survive and we can keep doing everything we need? They're actually really taking the chance to make a difference. They're building learning models. They're developing things so that we're not going to come out of this just saying we survived it. We're going to come out of this actually better. We're going to be a step ahead. So there's a lot of work going on by the staff, by the Brooke and Clint and people like that. And I almost don't want to mention names because I think everybody's really pitching in and doing that. So once again, our staff is working very hard and delivering more than just getting through it to really make us better when we come out.
All right. Are we ready to move on to action items? All right. First up, can I get a motion to approve the 2021 spring lane change list?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? All right. Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve the reviewed policies? These did not have any changes, so they only need one reading. And these are 702, 703, 704, 705, 706, and 709.
So moved.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? I just have to say, not being on the policy committee, and then I had to read them all today. I was like, it was weird not being on the policy committee. So, but that's all right. I'll get used to it. So, all right. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. And then we'll acknowledge the first reading of policies that have revisions, and these are policies 707 and 708. So they will be up for their second reading and approval at our next meeting. And then can I get a motion for item D, which is the proposed handbook changes, or we can discuss first, or we can discuss afterwards. So either way.
So move.
A motion to approve? Okay.
Yes.
Smith, what is the change? Is this the,
All right.
can we call it out, please?
We can let me get a second first, and then we can discuss. Let's do that.
Sorry.
Yep, second, okay, so we have a first and a second. All right, so I'm gonna let Eric kind of explain more fully again. We had this presentation last week, or 2 weeks ago from Dr. Miller, but I'll let Eric go over.
Yes, and so what you have in front of you was included in your update yesterday. So the first paragraph there, that's what currently reads in the handbook right now. And the added of the honor student designations from the Latin honor system, that would be what's being proposed to added to the handbook effective for this graduating class for the Latin honors with that. So that's is actually what the formal language would then look like in the handbook, which is the addition of the Latin honors set up there. And as I mentioned in the update yesterday, I've thought about this quite a bit, and the feedback that I've gotten from some family members or some families is really not so much that it's not a great idea, but what about the timing and in the middle of the school year versus the start of a school year. And as I've thought that through, my perspective has been, regardless of when you do that, it's going to be a change at some point, and there's always going to be the decision to be made for do it now or do it at the beginning of the next school year or whatever that case may be. So for the board to consider, that's really the only feedback I've heard, is that why now versus start of a school year? And the answer was the number. Dr. Miller mentioned this, answered this for us 2 weeks ago, as to why now with the number of students being honored this particular year. So.
And I do just want to highlight, so in past years, we've recognized a valedictorian, and this, the plan now is to not recognize a valedictorian specifically.
Correct. We do have the capability, obviously, to do class rank with our infinite campus system. So if any particular, higher education organization or, institution needs that, we certainly can pull that. When it comes to a question, that reminds me of the question of speakers at commencement. In the past, it has not been default the valedictorian who has spoken. At times, it has been the valedictorian, but it's typically the class president who would speak, but then also students submit speeches who would like to speak, and they're selected by their peers and their staff members. So sometimes it is the valedictorian, but it's not always by default. So not recognizing the valedictorian does not throw a wrench in that particular process either at this point. So.
Other comments on the proposed change? So I've heard from two parents. One parent who also was concerned about the timing of this, which I don't disagree. I hate being rushed to make a decision, and I feel a little bit that I feel a little rushed to make this decision, because when this was first brought to the board as an idea, which was, I think it was January maybe, but I don't know if it was discussed about being implemented this year, so I thought we kind of had time to think about it. And then I had another parent who just has a concern with having any kind of honor distinction, because yes, we are going to recognize 90 students out of this class, but what about now those students that aren't going to get recognized? Like, what does that mean for them? But then I pointed out to that parent, I'm like, well, we've always recognized everyone who's 3.0 and above, so that is not changing. We've always done that. Now this year is just adding different ways of recognizing as well. So I don't know. I've gone back and forth on how I feel about this, I guess, but I support the idea. I think it's great to recognize more students. I think this year in particular, it's a really positive thing to really recognize how hard these students have worked. But I also think at this year to make a change mid-year is a little questionable too. So I don't know. Yeah. But.
One thought that comes to my mind is this year has been so different. I guess I somewhat agree that maybe we could wait and do this next year if this was more of a normal year, but this year has been anything but, and so many things have been in a state of flux that we don't have any control over. So maybe it wouldn't hurt to go ahead with this now, and it would offer something to the students who are going to graduate this spring.
Yep.
So I guess
I know.
I'm okay with doing it now.
That's kind of where I keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah. So.
I can see the other point of view. I really can. But I'm thinking with what Eric said, that, let's just go ahead and do this.
Yep.
Just there are so many kids, in this class that I think they deserved, I'm not saying that, everybody deserved it. I mean, there is a little light, this year was very hard for them. For me, it's like, for me, timing doesn't matter. I think it will go in, but it's really, I think it will be nice to have it implemented this year.
Thank you.
And I think, like Eric pointed out, waiting till next year will still be an adjustment. It'll be an adjustment whenever we do it. So will we feel any better about it next year? I guess not being in the middle, but, and is there any tangible difference? I can't quite identify one.
Yeah, and then by next year, will I be like, oh, we should have done it last year? So, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and I think Dr. Miller has done a lot of research on this. It hasn't just come up lately. He's been doing a lot of research all year. And I was torn on what to do here. But I do think with this class especially, there are a very high number, unusually high number of students that are in the 3.0 plus. So.
Well, and truthfully, that's commendable that they've continued to be.
Yes.
Continue to have really excellent grades considering the challenges they've had since last March. So, yeah.
I talked to a couple students, 3 or 4, and they were nothing but positive about it. So,
Cool. All right.
Small sample, but
yeah. All right. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we do have a motion on the table. Are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of approving the handbook changes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. It is unanimous. Thank you. All right, upcoming items and reminders. Next board work session is March 4th. I would like to bring a topic back to the board for our next work session around the issue of mental health, since that's one of our goals. So if anyone has a specific thing they would like to hear about, please let either myself or Eric know, and we will find a way to make that happen. But otherwise, we'll come up with something on our own. But if there's something that anyone is thinking about, that'd be good to know. So I just want to keep our goals for the year in mind, especially for our work sessions. So, but I can't think of anything else that's coming up that we need to highlight. So.
No, I think we just, we look at March with the PD that our teachers are having that Adita mentioned before, as well as conferences coming up for Hartley and WIS here in March, and 4 days a week for everybody next week. So
Yes.
that's a big deal.
Very exciting. Yep. So yeah, so everyone just kind of keep that communication with your schools open, because there's definitely lots of stuff going on at all of our buildings. So, all right, if there is nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.